Welcome! It's song and story time. Before we get going though, just remember that since we are obviously not at the church today, there's no number to text. We should be back to live next week though. And let's have a little sing-along.
Well, I remember singing this song when I was very young, so it's wonderful to return to it and sing it together. Are you ready, Kiara? All grown-ups, all children, all mothers, all fathers, our sisters and brothers in the family of God. All grown-ups, all children, all mothers, all fathers, our sisters and brothers in the family of God. So many children, all of them different. God gave each person their own thing to do. All of God's children are sisters and brothers. I know God loves me and God loves you too. All grown-ups, all children, all mothers, all fathers, are sisters and brothers in the family of God. All grown-ups, all children, all mothers, all fathers, are sisters and brothers in the family of God. God's love is for everybody, everyone around the world. Me and you and all God's children, from across the street to around the world. Across the street to around the world. God's love is for everybody, everyone around the world. Me and you and all God's children, from across the street to around the world. Across the street to around the world.
Welcome to Story Time. I hope you enjoyed your sing-along. And now, before we get to this week's story, let's review the big story. So fill in the words, remember? Here we go.
Yep.
God created and it was good. Humans missed the mark. God stuck with them. God called a family. When the people became slaves, God sent Moses and delivered them. They learned to live in Shalom community. They learned that there is only one God, and we love God with all our being. The people got to the promised land. And they got in a cycle of missing the mark. And God sent judges. God called Samuel to be a prophet. But the people wanted a king like the other nations around them, so Samuel anointed kings. Solomon built a temple in Jerusalem to be a gathering place for worship of God. But all the kings continued to miss the mark. And the kingdom divided into the north, Israel, and the south, Judah. God worked through prophets, and God stuck with the people, even as first the north and then the south kingdom fell to foreign superpowers. Many of the people were captured and put into exile, and others were left in the ruins of what had been their home. In exile, the people learned a lot. They learned how to worship God, and they learned about God's hope. And after 70 years, the exiled people were allowed to return. They rebuilt Jerusalem and the temple. And now we are in what we call the Second Temple period, because it's the Second Temple. Don't mess with that, please. And now the people are waiting for a
Messiah.
The Messiah is announced in like this very surprising genealogy that we talked about last week. And now we're to the next story. The angel says, you'll have a son, and God will give him David's throne. Mary says, God looked at me, now I'm the luckiest person around. God scatters the proud, brings the tyrants down, helps the victim, lets the hungry feast, and beyond that, God does exactly what God promised to.
sounds familiar. Like, it kind of sounds like God gathers the people.
It does a little bit.
Yeah, like a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, there's some musical themes going here. Yep.
Catching on to you, Jonathan.
So today's story, this is the story of Mary, the mother of Jesus. So can you imagine this, of what Mary would feel like? How would you feel if suddenly there was an angel standing right in front of you? Yeah. Like, whoa, probably, yes. And I think there's a reason that most of the angel stories in the Bible start off with a message from the angel, something like, do not be afraid.
That is always sounding familiar.
Yeah, that sounded familiar too, right. But I think maybe Mary was a little less scared because of something that we often don't catch in this story. Malachi, do you think you can fill us in a little bit on this? Some of these conversations we've talked about with Mary.
So, Mary really knew her scriptures, and there are a lot of things in this story that are kind of like the verses or the stories that she would have grown up knowing.
Mm-hmm.
Take, for instance, the greeting, the Lord is with you. It's a very normal way of greeting people. And there are some other things that angels have said that show up in other verses of the Bible that she read.
Yeah, so I encourage you all to look at the prompts for this week to find all the different things that are familiar in this passage. There was a lot of things for Mary to recognize when the angel came to her.
And we're not meaning well, when she saw the angel, she wasn't like looking back just only Deborah to her time.
Wait, what about
foreshadowing something?
What about wait.
What about this story reminds you of Deborah?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wait, why does this sound like Deborah's story?
Because Mary sang a song just like Deborah.
That's true.
Yeah.
This kind of theme keeps happening more and more.
Yeah, Mary's song is like a lot of others in the Bible. And often these songs, like Deborah's song, Mary's song, Miriam's song, Hannah's song, they're often sung by women, but sometimes they're by men too. And at the very end of this series, when we get to June, we will have one that's a man's song as well. And it's kind of like when people's emotions are just so big, when their hearts are so full of God, that has to come out. So they break into song like this one. I'm a theater director, so I think it's kind of like musical theater. When the people's emotions are so big, they express them by bursting into song. Do you ever have that where your emotions are just so big that they have to come out somehow? I wonder how you express those. Zeph, you want to tell us what you do when you have really big emotions? Right now you have big tired emotions, I think, coming out in yawns.
This started a few months ago.
Your tired emotions?
Okay,
Yeah.
so let's talk more about what do you do with your body when you have a big emotion?
Yeah.
We got you something to help you with this. Do you
We
remember
did.
what that was? A trampoline.
Yep,
Because what do
it's
you
true.
do when you have a big emotion?
Well, I used to jump.
You still do.
Still do.
A lot. Malachi, what about you?
I usually plan something.
You get planning, don't you?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think I tend to go for a walk. Kind of just relax and move around. What about you, Flush?
Sometimes for me too.
Sometimes you too?
Yep.
Oh, I dance. That's my biggest thing. But I also bake a lot, especially if it's an emotion of frustration or something, or like being really happy or relieved.
Hey,
Yeah, kind of all of them. But I bake.
That brings
Make
us
some
back
bread.
to a Sunday. Aggression cookies.
Yes, yeah, we talked
That's
about that
true.
when I had those big emotions of anger or frustration when I was a kid. I made aggression cookies.
Chug,
And I
toot,
danced.
toot, I don't wanna go.
Yep, that was the story.
I wonder if some of the things that you all do now as children when you're frustrated or when you have really big emotions or when you're happy, I wonder if those will come out when you're grown-ups too, kind of like ours do,
Yeah.
like when we were growing up. Well, we're getting really close to Jesus' birth, so you get to light 3 Advent candles this week: hope and peace and joy, because Jesus is hope and Jesus is peace and Jesus is joy.
And now for our big song.
Big song. Get
That's
our
right.
chords all pulled up
Here we
here.
go.
I think we're ready.
All right.
Ready?
I
Oh,
think
Daniel
so,
has to
I
make it
think
a
so.
little
Here we
bit
go.
bigger so he can read it.
Sorry.
All right. Faster?
Yeah.
This
It's the story of how it all began. God made matter and chaos shattered. Eve and Adam, they tried to hide. The world got violent, God replied with a mark and a flood and a rainbow sign. God's love written on skin and sky. Then God called a family to be a blessing to the earth. A mother and her favorite son wrestle for the blessing. Another son becomes a slave. The land is saved from famine. God's family grows. Egypt oppresses. They grow to God. And God sends Moses 10 strange signs. Say, please release them. By the sea, God saves them. The people will complain. And God brings bread, daily food, and 10 new rules. 5 sisters come and ask for land. God says, yes, amend the law. Moses says, in your new life, cross the Jordan. Love God with your whole heart and with all your being. And your strength. Now listen, God is one. Only God. God is one. Only God. Cross over Jordan, stories and stones, serpents and sharks, and the walls come down. God sends judges like Deborah, and the land has rest. Roots worth more than 7 sons, redeem the lost with steadfast love. Corruption in the temple, then God sends Samuel. God gives them a prophet. They ask for a king. Does God need a temple? A wise king forgets. And when a bully rules the land, the nation tears apart and loses David's heart. Through a widow's gift and a prophet's cry, God gives life in desperate times. Josiah reads a misplaced scroll. He turns to God wholeheartedly, like David did in his time. God gives Jeremiah a picture of God's ruined family. Is there any hope left? Is there any hope left? Is there any hope left for you, Jerusalem? Any hope? Any hope left? Is there any hope left for you, Jerusalem? And by the streets of Babylon, how can we sing when you are gone, Jerusalem? Jerusalem. I'm in a valley of human bones. These bones are Israel. God's breath is hope. Haman plans death for Esther's exiles. She risked her life so they might survive. Finally, God's family rebuilds the temple in Jerusalem. God plunges them into a sea of joy and celebration of only God. God is one. Only God. Comfort to Jerusalem. Your warfare finally ceases. Matthew lists these generations. Abraham to Jesus. The angel says you'll have a son, and God will give him David's throne. Mary says, God looked at me. Now I'm the luckiest person around. God loves every one of us, it's true, and God loves the universe.
Woo! There's a big song.
Yep.
All right. Have a great week. We'll see you next week.
See you next week.
Bye.